Good job, guys. So, we have a guest speaker today. And he contacted me, oh gosh, in maybe August or something, and said that he'd like to come in October. And we came up with this particular day. Oh, I'm going to let you even know who he is. With this particular day, and I've gotten to know him not only through emails and conversations, but also this morning when I picked him up at his hotel. And he's just an absolute delight. I want to tell you a little something about him. Boy, I really wish I'd brought my glasses here. He is an author, a speaker, and a facilitator. He is oh golly, I got to get the light on it. He is the owner and director of An Extraordinary Life and the Healing Center, companies that promote healing, spiritual awareness, and self-empowerment. He is the developer of the neurotrauma healing process called NTHP and the soul recognition process, SRC. He's been a student and a teacher of Science of Mind. In fact, he got his start here at the Calgary Center. He's going to tell you something about that. He is a trainer. He's been a coach for 15 years. He started his private practice that involved facilitating and teaching his process in the year 2000. He's published a book, Reclaim Your Power, that's an introduction to these things that he's going to talk about today. He also hosts live and online seminars and workshops and speaks about healing, awareness, self-empowerment. Dane is originally from the Hidden Gem Salmon Arm, BC, where he grew up playing in and water skiing in the amazing Shuswap Lake. He's a local. He now resides in North Vancouver with his partner Anne, where they have, I love this line, where they can often be found deep in nature, hiking in search of the next most dynamic waterfall. I can't wait to hear what he has to say. Please welcome Dane Stevens.
Well, is she wonderful or what? Thank you, Pat. You are wonderful for Pat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just changed the name of my talk. The song was just so amazing, so appropriate. The new name of the talk is now to find the child behind my eyes and to know my name. Love. Yeah, very appropriate. Thank you so much for having me here. It does mean a lot to me, and it's very appropriate, or it feels appropriate to me to be here because my spiritual journey did start here. And so it sort of feels like coming full circle for me. And I'd like to share my story, my journey with you, which comes to now and what I'm doing now and how I came to be doing what I'm doing. So the name of the talk was called The Spirit of Healing, but like I say, that song really says it all. And the gist of it is that these things that happen to us that don't look like we would like them to, or like we think that they should, are sometimes the biggest catalysts for us. They are the biggest gifts for us. It's just not the wrapping we would have used. So I'm going to like to share that story with you. And first I'll share a story that maybe we can, we'll relate to that. So 2 guys died. Went to heaven. St. Peter meets him at the pearly gate, says, "Hi, hello, how are you, who are you?" First gentleman comes up and says, "I'm Harry Schwartz, cab driver from Jersey." So St. Peter looks in the scroll and looks at him, "Oh, Harold, yes. And reaches behind and brings out a beautiful ivory staff and gives it to him, and reaches back and brings a beautiful silk robe and gives it to him, and says, "Your ride is coming, your mansion's just around the corner. Welcome, welcome." So Harry takes a big puff of his cigar, jumps in his limo, off he goes to his mansion. The gentleman behind him was a pastor, and he thinks, "Oh my goodness, if a cab driver from Jersey gets an ivory staff, a silk robe, and a mansion, I can't imagine what a man of the cloth for 30 years will get." So he walks up, and St. Peter says, "Welcome, welcome, how are you, who are you?" Says, "My name is Pastor Frederick Archibald from Oxford." So St. Peter looks down the scroll, "Oh, yes, and he reaches behind and brings him a rather crooked walking stick and gives him a fairly shabby robe, and he says, "Your hill is just up on the hill, as you can see." And he looks up and sees this fairly plain-looking house that could be considered a shack, and he sort of stumbles away in bewilderment and thinks, no, there's got to be a mistake here. So he goes back to St. Peter and says, St. Peter, there must be a mistake. I spoke the word of God for 30 years, and a cab driver gets a limo and a mansion and a ivory staff, and I get a shabby robe and a walking stick and a shack. Surely there's been a mistake. So St. Peter looks in a scroll, goes down, and says, no, there's been no mistake. It's true that you did speak the word of God for 30 years, and when you spoke, people listened. But when that man drove cab, people prayed. Like I say, sometimes we don't know what is ultimately effective for us. So to share my story, it started, of course, with a relationship. And I was a very black and white person. Played hockey, was a very physical guy, and if I couldn't touch it, taste it, smell it, feel it, it wasn't real. I didn't know I had a spiritual bone in my body at that point. So when I met somebody who touched my heart, fell in love, basically, with this girl, I didn't know what to do with those feelings. And it put me in a place of discomfort. I know I couldn't deny it. I wasn't going to run away from it as such. But I was in this relationship that was very difficult for me, and we fought a lot. And we were both in love, and we were both in this relationship. But we fought a lot, and we broke up a lot of times. It had its passions and its excitement and adventure and so on, but it also had its the basis of an immature relationship, of misunderstandings and the inability to communicate, and also just the real jealousies that came up with an immature young relationship, as they do. So eventually it came to the point where we were either going to commit or not, sort of thing. We were fighting so much and breaking so much, it was either, do it or don't. So I did the obvious thing and gave her a ring. So she said yes, and that lasted for less than a year. But when we did break up, I was devastated. And I'm the one who initiated most of these breakups, most of the time we broke up. So it didn't make sense to me. My heart was just bleeding, so to speak, and it didn't make sense. It was illogical, and I thought, what kind of an insane romantic am I? And we were seeing a marriage counselor in the end, so she could get the help that she needed after we kept going. So I ended up staying on seeing the counselor, and the great part about that is the counselor got me started in meditation, introduced me to meditation. And I was so out of it, so washed out mentally and emotionally, I could barely go to work. I just left everything with her and moved, and a friend of mine who owned their family owned orchards let me stay in what's called it's a picker shack. It's a little 200-300 square foot place that just has the basics, a bedroom and a kitchen kind of thing. And I stayed there, and I ended up meditating for hours and hours on end. In the picker shack and in the orchard. And that's where I had my wake-up call. I had a satori, where I literally saw the crystal within me and instantly realized life within me. And it was obviously a real moment for me to have that realization. But also with what came out of that was memory. And I remembered a childhood sexual abuse incident that happened to me from the age of 6 to 8, when I was from 6 to 8. And it was a very confusing time at that 6 to 8 because it wasn't violent. It was an older kid in the neighborhood who I really looked up to. So it wasn't violent, but it was still very violent as you're stealing the innocence of that child. And that came up too. So even though I had this great realization, I was still very much in my stuff, very much, mentally and emotionally distraught. So like we do, I went home to my roots to lick my wounds and get the loving and support that I needed, and my family was living here in Calgary. So I moved to Calgary, and my mother knew that I was a very black and white person, and so therefore she didn't share with me that her and my sister had been going to the Center for Positive Livings for a couple of years because they thought I would just poo-poo it or negate it or what have you. But seeing the place that I was in, she decided maybe this is, maybe he might be open to it because I was just so mentally and emotionally washed. So she took me to a service, and that was at that point at the Max Bell Theater. It was a Center for Positive Living. And Dr. Arlene Bump was speaking at that time. And I remember it to this day just vividly. It's like there was a spotlight on me. I was sitting close to the front. And it felt like she was speaking just to me. It felt completely personal, like this is just for me. And I went to the first 4 services, and I was just hung on every word she said, my mouth open, just my eyes glued to her. And it was my time. It was my wake-up call. And I feel very fortunate being brought into this environment for my spiritual development and my spiritual growth. So it was really a real developmental time for me, and I just embraced the science of mind. I started taking the science of mind classes. I learned about facilitation with a group that was committed or that was connected to the center, and started to run the teen group, and eventually I even opened services for Dr. Carol Carnes, who became the minister there. So I got very involved and learned about manifestation. I ended up moving to Vancouver and started a coaching and training business. And because I'd learned about manifestation, I created a great life for myself. I had a successful business, making great money and great employees, was living just off the ocean in a beautiful place, traveling, driving the vehicle of choice. Life was good. Everything was right where I wanted it to be, except for my relationships. And as I looked at it, I could see that I had a pattern in my relationships, and this is a number of years down the road, where I would get into an intimate relationship, end it prematurely, and then seek intimacy elsewhere automatically. And it became so obvious that, okay, that there's something obviously here that's I need to look at that's going on. And I realized there that was the same pattern that happened when I was with it was basically the same pattern when I was with my fiancée. And that's where the light kind of came on. It took me a while to realize this, but the emotion that was coming up through that falling in love was the wounding of that child, was the hurt of that child. And that was the opening. Because as much as I didn't want to admit it, that relationship from 6 to 8 years old was my first intimate relationship. So to have that happen again, it triggered those memories, it triggered that experience, and up came all that confusion, that hurt, this mistrust, all that wounding came forward. So I knew that I had to look into this situation and find out if I had, how to deal with this. So I went and I did a bunch of some group therapy things, and that didn't quite resonate for me. I did some counseling, and then it was okay, but I didn't really, nothing really spurred it. And eventually I was referred to somebody who was a body worker and a therapist, and she also did some cranial sacral work. And so she came highly recommended. So I went to see her. And she first assessed me and said I had a circ in my lower chakra, and the energy sits in the body, the lower chakra seemed appropriate. So, and she said that when this breaks, stuff is going to happen. And I was in such a solid place in my life, I didn't think much about it, and I kept going. And after a while, she asked if I'd like to try and force this trauma basically out of me. I knew nothing of trauma at that time and very little about energy as such. So I said, sure. And she talked about it like a home run. Do you want to try and get rid of that, like hit a home run? Who doesn't want to hit a home run? Little did she tell me that you can hit a foul ball. So a number of sessions in, and she wasn't cheap, but I was making lots of money at the time, so I thought, no problem, keep going. And a number of sessions in, she said, or it did break, and I was scared instantly for no reason. I remember she had me on the table and twisted in different positions and telling me to go there. And I remember that I was just in the ozone, in the ethers. I didn't know which way was up. And I came off of the table after that session. I was, very disoriented and didn't know which way, had to sort of settle myself. But I still had the feelings of fear. And I just assumed it would subside. And it didn't. And it felt like I was plugged into a 220-volt outlet and I was just electric. I had jittery platelets. The inside, as I can speak here, most people understand the inside creates the outside. So feeling fearful and unstable inside of me, that's what started to happen outside in my life. And I started to lose everything. I lost clients, I lost contracts, I lost the sale of a business, And I wasn't a millionaire by any stretch, but within 18 months, I was broke. And she stopped seeing me, because I ran out of money, but more so because she was scared and didn't know what she'd done, didn't know how to fix it. I remember literally yelling at her, "You can't leave me like this." And that was the start of it. The damage was already done. And that set me on a mad search to figure out what the hell happened to me and how to get my life back. So I tried everything I could possibly, whoever would see me, and nobody had any idea what had happened to me or how to fix what had gone on. So it took 5 years for me to find somebody who understood what happened to me and explain and understood what happened to me. Ironically enough, it's Hazel, her name is Hazel Carter, and she knew because she had the same thing happen to her. She had a healer try to force the trauma out of her, and now she's a trauma specialist, so that's how we're made. So I got some relief simply in understanding what happened and having this person that had the same experience and she was doing well. So that gave me some real hope, was probably the biggest relief. And she was a student of Peter Levine, who does somatic experiencing. I got some healing, but I didn't get the full healing from that work. But like I say, the hope was the biggest thing. So I kept looking for what would give me the relief that I needed. And it wasn't until I discovered John Bradshaw's work, it's a left-right brain process, where I really made the connection to that life within me, and I knew it. So it was a big period in my life, a big key where I was an oh my God moment where I had made the connection to that fearful child, that fearful part within me. And I tried to do the work on my own, and I knew the connection was there, and I was making the connection, but I couldn't make it safe enough. I couldn't build the trust up enough for this part of me to come back into this moment or to stop that fear from happening. So it was like an 8-month fight with myself. Even though that part was there, I couldn't build that trust. So once again, I started looking for somebody who did this type of work, who knew what was going on here. And I scoured the internet and talked to every counselor or therapist that I knew, and nobody did this work. And I even tried to talk them into it. Nobody would do this work, the work I'm talking about. So it was ironically enough, right across the road from me, I found somebody. It was almost a year later that I found somebody literally across the road from me who did this type of work, the left-right brain work that I'm talking about. And I worked with Mary Hoffman for about 2 months. And in that time, I made traction. And when I say traction, it means a consistently positive connection to that life. And I started to get the relief, and I took the work over on my own with just working with her with 2 months. I got the relief as I was able to connect to this life within me and give it what it needed, give it what it didn't get at that time. And from that, the process that I work with and that I teach now just flowed out of me. And that is now what I'm teaching it, and what I'm offering to people is this process that I teach, which is a left-right brain process, which is quite simple, but it gives you direct access to the life within you. So to hear the song, to find the child behind my eyes, part of the message I want to share here is, yes, we have a subconscious mind, but it's not that hard to access. We just haven't known how. Maybe it's not meant to stay subconscious. Spirit is not trying to hide from us. Our life is not trying to hide from us. And I'm a trauma specialist now. And all trauma means is something stuck, looping, unprocessed in your nervous system. And when we say trauma, people automatically think the experience of war, car accident, severe abuse, something very big emotionally or big physically. But that doesn't have to be the case. You can experience trauma from living with a high-functioning alcoholic and not even know that you're experiencing a trauma or creating a trauma to cope with the situation, because if an alcoholic, automatically that self-loathing is being passed on whether they know it or not. Experiencing the death of a loved one can have a profound experience, especially on a young mind. We don't realize that a trauma is occurring or has set in there. Or abandonment, which is a huge one. I mean, there's nothing hugely emotional about abandonment, but there is to that child that can't process or make sense of that. or maybe not even a child. Sometimes abandonment at an older age can affect us as well. So you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that doesn't have some degree of what's termed trauma looping within them. So, can I steal a drink? Yes. Thank you. I can have it, my goodness. So the process I work with now helps us to make that connection. What we tend to want to do with these experiences is get rid of them. Our medical system and the Western way is we want to get rid of these things that are affecting us in a negative way. But that's the wrong direction. As long as you go out there for your good, if you look for somebody to heal you, or some technique that you have to change how you act, or somebody to heal you, or a medication, you're just going to create more frustration, more separation, and more anger as this pattern keeps cycling within you and therefore outpicturing itself. Because the inside creates the outside, if we have this negative pattern cycling within us, it is going to outpicture itself as a negative pattern in our life. It doesn't matter if it's with your health, your wealth, your relationships, your expression, your career. If you have a negative pattern going on in your life, it's because you have something looping inside your nervous system that is outpitching itself. And what I have come to learn, what I've come to realize is this is by design. This is the universe trying to get your attention and trying to bring you inside. Because as long as you tune out, that's exactly what's happening. When you tune in, and instead of asking the question, how do I get rid of this, you ask the question, what is this? That creates connection. Because this experience, that this dysfunction that's happening in your life consistently is happening for you. And it is there to get your attention and to take you inside, not outside. The kingdom of heaven is within. So when we tune in, I'm going to give you 4 steps that can help you to deal with things that are going on in your life on a consistent basis, or so you can work with them in real time. So the first one is awareness. And I'm speaking to you now so you can have that awareness. And with that awareness, say thank you. Thank you for showing me what's going on inside of me. We talk about the subconscious mind as our most powerful creative faculty, which is the segue to higher consciousness. And if we tune in to that higher consciousness, what we have to go through is whatever has separated from that knowledge or that belief in wholeness. Each one of these situations, each one of these dysfunctions that has occurred has a belief in separation. So when we can bring that part into this present moment where it's not happening anymore, that's when all of our energy is going in the same direction. So if you want to know what you're thinking, what you're believing, just look into your world, and that will show you what you're thinking, what you're believing. And therefore, when you have a pattern that's going on, a negative pattern, unwanted behavior, chronic condition, that is showing you that there's something that is out of alignment with what's going on inside of you. So the first step is awareness and saying thank you. The second step is to go inside. When you're able to go inside and, like I said, give that part what it didn't get at that time, and or what you're not giving yourself at this time, that's where what happens is that part gets to feel safe, gets to get reconnected to your true self, to your authentic self again. And the fourth step is just happens. Or third step, it's allowance. Because when we are able to give ourselves what we need, when we become our own source, what happens is those tapes that have been running involuntarily within us, when they're not running within us anymore, first of all, there's nothing opposing us, and we're not going against ourselves. And what that means is, it means that all of our energy is going in the same direction. It creates space within us. So all of our energy starts to go in the same direction. And when that happens, what we truly desire from our heart's desires will manifest in our life. And space is created within us. Space equals peace. And from that space, from that peace, from that security, comes our authentic self, call it spirit, comes forth naturally. There's nothing to do. Life is an inside job. So when you're able to, like you say, give that part of you, that inner part of you, what it needs, what it didn't get, then automatically you get reconnected to the present moment, to our authentic self. And all of our energy is going in the same direction. And we get reconnected back to our nature. Our nature is effortless. Our nature is peace, is power, is wholeness, is beauty, is richness, is creativity. That's our nature. And it's the essence of our being, and it's our hard wiring. We don't have to create that, and it takes no effort to have that occur. We just need to get these parts of us that have a belief in separation, that have disconnected from that part, back into this present moment, and that's what occurs in our life. I now teach this process, NTHP and SRC, neurotrauma healing process, and soul recognition process, and I no longer have any of the patterns. I feel a sense of peace and a sense of wholeness and security within me, and it's almost profound, because when you do that inner work and you give that part what it needs, it's just there. And it's a silence and a stillness. The peace that surpasseth all understanding is there, and it's there waiting for us. I'm in a relationship now, which is quite a unique story. She was actually my high school sweetheart, and we haven't seen each other for 25 years. And after I did this work, I ended up connecting with her, and it's just so right, and it's just so on purpose and so easy. So I'm here to share with you this process and to let you know that your nature is there. And this higher aspect of you, this higher part of you, is not trying to hide from you, but it's in the places that maybe you don't think it will be. It's in maybe those places that don't feel good. It's in the negative patterns in your life. This is the universe trying to get your attention. Pay attention. So the first step is awareness, and say thank you, because you're now aware that these patterns in your life is the universe's way of getting your attention. Okay? And the second one is go inside. Don't tune out, tune in. Go inside and give yourself what you need. And most people don't know how to do that inner work. And that's where the workshop that I'm doing this afternoon, we show you how to make direct access to that inner life, that it may be a child, it may be an adult, either, doesn't matter, but how to make contact with that inner life in a safe, gentle, and certain manner. And the third step just occurs. It's allowance, allowing who you are to come forth. Who you are is peace, is power, is wholeness, is love, 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 love. Thank you so much for having me here. I hope you can, we all see you this afternoon, and keep feeling within. Stop checking within and allowing who you are to come forth. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Dane